Hello, I'm a silhouette, a shadow. It's Brian, the Maythorn Monthly for August Bank Holiday, and we're down at New Brighton watching the sunset. And it's behind me, it's going to go down, and there's loads of people here. In fact, there are more people here tonight than there were when we came the other day. So let's stay here a little bit and watch the sunset. There are a number of reasons why this venue was interesting to me, and it wasn't all about buses. First of all, it's a disused airfield in Burscough in Lancashire, which may not be in Lancashire anymore, and I used to drive here before I actually passed my test. This is the sort of place you could come as a learner and drive around, so that was 50 years ago. The buses themselves, yes, these are from my youth as well. There are buses amongst these here that I used to go to school on. I also met interesting people here that I didn't know but shared experiences with me, because I used to travel to Kirby College on a bus for my A-levels, and I just ran into someone else who did exactly the same thing. And I recalled a story of how one day the driver decided he'd take a shortcut and got our double-decker bus stuck under a low bridge. There were two things that we were looking at on our day out here, and one of them was the fact that a lot of these buses are privately owned, and the owners are proud to show around what they've done, brand new seats or seat covers that they put in. The other thing I noticed is the destinations on the front of these buses were to places that were in our area and I knew quite well. Some of them were from my original days in Liverpool when I was growing up, and the bus service 101 I seem to remember went from Liverpool to Preston. I used to see that going past regularly. There's a number of buses here that have an open back. We were always late for school, but it always not lost if you could jump on a bus that's going past. And I used to jump on the back platform, go straight up the stairs. The upper deck looks the same as I remember it, with a long bench seat at the back and loads of seating down the middle on either side of an aisle. And my wife Ruth tells me she also used to jump on a moving bus as it left the bus stop, and that type of bus from Chester City is here as well. Having mixed with my friend Colin and his photographer friends, I'm quite familiar with the way that they can get models to pose for their pictures and get them in different positions. Well, we decided that the two buses from our school days that we most wanted to photograph could be treated in the same way. I didn't know this beforehand, but the photographers who were there had obviously done this before. So there was then a process of getting these two buses, the memorable buses from my school days, to line up exactly as required for various photographs. And so there they are, the two types of bus that took me to school back in the 60s and 70s. I've got some more bits for you. Bits and pieces, so let's start with bits. You know that Liverpool folk song, the In My Liverpool Home one? We speak with an accent exceedingly rare, meet under a statue exceedingly bare. And of course it refers to the Lewis's statue in Lime Street, which is being cleaned up. We walked past it the other day, and yes, the whole of the building seems to have been cleaned up. Good news. Bits and pieces and snippets means that we zoom about from one place to another, and no horsing about. We're actually in Bulgaria. We're back at Colin's house. When we got there, or when he got there I should say, I wasn't with him the first time he went over this year, his broadband was broken. Appears the cable had been damaged over to the pole sometime during the winter, and the repair was a replacement, because they now do full fibre in the village of Oresh. Amazing, these little small villages get it. So very thin cable, fibre optic, and so when you see them stringing the cable across, you can see it alongside the old cable and how much thinner it is. One day I'll get a piece of fibre optic cable and hold it up to the camera so you can see just how fine it is. Over in Spain, here's a story we were following in 2019, 2020, until we were no longer allowed to go there. Opposite our apartment at Marina Door, this piece of land that we filmed from time to time started out as a piece of wasteland, and then they started doing all sorts with it, putting in channels and drainage, putting up little buildings and huts, putting a surface on it eventually, and then we didn't go there for 2 years. So when we came back, it was pretty clear that the trucks that were on this site were carrying aggregate and bringing waste back from sites, and it's probably a building company who's taken it on, and this is their base for their wagons. Another place we've been to in Spain recently is Torredembarra, further up the coast towards Barcelona. And remember that little house that I showed you earlier in the year? Well, we were sitting in a bar just by there, and this police vehicle kept going past and stopping and reversing and doing all sorts of manoeuvres. And then as it drove away, it dawned on me, it wasn't making any noise. And I think what was happening was that the police had just got an electric vehicle and were trying to learn how to drive it. Anyway, we just carried on gazing out to sea and drinking our wine. I've had a bit of a moan about the Merseyrail trains that we were supposed to get a couple of years ago. We're still running trains from the 70s like this one, which is seen pulling into Hooton Station one evening. But the story of Merseyrail trains goes back a lot further. And I was living on the Wirral when the 70s trains were introduced as brand new trains. And I barely remember the ones that were before it. They were called Class 502s, but my memory's been jogged because we've been up to Bursko. It was a bus event that I went to. And as you can see from the shed it's in, there's a lot of buses about. But over in the corner that I'm trying to get to through all the people are two of the old coaches that they're restoring. As you can see, there's a restoration society. These things are normally done by volunteers. They were selling various souvenirs. I got my souvenir mug, and that's actually a picture on the mug of one of the old Class 502 trains. While I was there, I got to actually go inside the carriages they're restoring, and it brought back a lot of memories because I actually do remember travelling on these trains, even though up to now I'd forgotten all about them. I have also had a peek at the new trains. They are here in the country, but they're hiding around the various depots on Merseyrail, just not being put into service. So I found out that if you peered over a tall wall down by Bank Hall, the Kirkdale depot, where they're keeping a lot of them, you can see them all lined up there waiting to go. But when will it be? Let's quickly whiz over to Australia, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms. It takes quite a while to get there, but luckily we've got someone on the spot. Colette has been up to Mandurah, not far from where she lives. This is a shopping centre known as the Forum, and this is the Mandurah Express. No, it's not a train this time, but it looks like it could be a cafe, and we're going to keep on with the story and find out what it ends up being. But to me, it looks like a train-themed cafe. Later in the programme, we'll be joining Colette and Phil as they go out on a historical trip on the waterways, and that will be accompanied by a true renowned Aboriginal who will sing you a song and play his didgeridoo. Now then, what more could you ask for? And back in Bulgaria at Colin's house, he spotted this creature, which he tells me is a black cricket. I would have said it was a beetle or something, but we cleared a load of beetles out of his kitchen when we arrived, and they didn't look like this, to be fair. And so, as he's an expert on wildlife and has written books about various topics, I guess I have to agree with him. He knows his stuff. This is a black cricket. Couldn't name the moth though, but there are so many different types of moths, who can? I'm back in North Wales, where Alan lives, and he's got my studio tape recorder. The parts have arrived from Madrid, and Alan is having a look at how he can make this machine work again. In the meantime, I was having a look in the back, because I always find it's impressive how these machines were built in those days. All discrete components. If a resistor blows, you can just change it. Anyway, you can take whole boards out, which is what we were doing, and taking a motor control board out. So the repair is underway, and I'll keep you informed perhaps by next time as to how it's gone. Finally back here in Arrow Park. Yes, Arrow Park's just over there. As I've mentioned before, we live by it. I told you I'd been out to look for a waterfall last time, and it seemed to have dried up. Well, I think this is the waterfall. I haven't had confirmation from anyone yet, but it looks like waterfall shaped, and if there was any water, it would run down in a sort of waterfall manner, so I'm assuming that's correct. Anyway, back to our walk through the park. There's a whole load of things to see here, which we'll deal with another time. A lot of trees have either fallen down or been chopped down, and there's still a lot of them left. And there are some historic buildings here as well, including this one, which is Arrow Hall. This is a story we'll have to pick up another time, because we need to get to the pub. I told you about the pub last time, didn't I? We do end up there quite a lot after our walks. Well, it's the weather. You need a drink when you've been for a walk in hot weather. And so do all your animals. And so as we arrived, I thought I could see a horse. Is that right? Get a bit closer. Yeah, it's a horse. And then the picnic tables, which you tend to think of putting food and drink on. Well, somebody's put their dog on it. The girl told me it was a very needy dog. Well, that's extremely needy, needing to be on the table. Anyway, these picnic tables are quite useful, because as you can see, the girl who's supposed to be riding the horse is a little bit small to just jump on. So she's using the picnic bench to get on and ride away. Never did find out what the horse was drinking. This is the swimming pool for Costa Azahar 1. We are actually the only block all along this road that hasn't got artificial grass down, so it's our turn now. The community are clubbing together. We're all paying about 30 euros, sorry head, to get some artificial grass down here, and then we won't be left out anymore. Well, the place for my coffee break today is Sandsend on the Yorkshire coast. I'm on the cliffs above the sea, the North Sea here, and Sandsend is an interesting little road that I first came through on the bus, where you zigzag through the town and have to wait to cross the bridge across the river. I come across a couple of other interesting things here, particularly for my transport fans. Interesting place to live. So, coffee first from Cafe Vinci, and today it was so hot outside that I wanted to go and take my coffee in the shade, so I took it in a takeaway cup and went to hide in a nearby car park. And that's where I saw the train, well, a carriage from a train anyway, right up on the cliff overlooking the sea. And I tried to get closer to it and get some better pictures, but it was pretty well camouflaged, and I'm sure that was on purpose, and they would like to retain their privacy. But wow, what a view, what a place to have your home. And what a home. There's a few people out doing water sports out at sea, a bit too far out for us to go and film them, and as I can't swim, I'm not going to volunteer to get any closer. As we look round here, there's a bit of a stretch of beach over there as the road comes round the corner. It comes from inland, downhill, round the bay there, and then goes back round towards Whitby on the left. You can see parked cars. If you couldn't see them normally, you can see them because they're reflections of the sun at the moment. I asked the girl in the cafe that I stopped at how you pronounce the name of this place, because I was calling it Sandsend. I'm not sure why, but there are two words there, sand, send, but they're the wrong two words apparently. She told me it's Sandsend, so it's the end of the sand here. I've been in Whitby for a few days, and just about the only thing you can get there is fish and chips. There are no coffee shops whatsoever, and very few restaurants. Most places that serve food shut at 8 o'clock at night. I haven't quite figured that out yet. A short trip up the coast to Sandsend, and there are coffee bars and cafes galore here, all sort of hanging off the cliff edge and off the road edge over the beach. So brilliant places to stop for a coffee. There are plenty of car parks here, there's public toilets. Some places don't even have those these days, that's good news. So Sandsend is a good place to visit and spend a few hours. And over in Bulgaria, here's a place where I've spent a few weeks before now. The hotel on the square used to be called the Odysseus, something like that anyway, but it's now rather better called the Hotel Danube. There's a lot of pubs and restaurants in the locality. The fountains are refreshing. There's plenty of trees for shade and a lot of people about, so it has a nice atmosphere to it, and I could see it from my bedroom window. There's parking alongside the Trumpet, a pub that I've featured before, and today we see in the Trumpet house martins, I believe. In Spain we see these house martins in the eaves and nesting on our balconies. Never seen them this close before. Colin ordered me the beer that I apparently got quite drunk on in Velika Tarnovo. I don't remember which beer it was, I just remember staggering back to my hotel. But here in Svishtov, my hotel is overlooking the square. I have a view from the window here, and one morning I woke up and I heard talking and then music, so I had to go down and investigate.
Здравей, момиченце! Как се казваш?
Аз съм Божидара, а вие кой сте?
Моето име е Никола Живков.
О, знам за вас! Вие сте учителя, открил първата детска градина в България, тук в моя роден град Свищов. Но защо Свищов?
Съдбата ме доведе тук, в града на първите неща, пълен с будни люде и деца.
Това ли нарекохте детската градина детинска мъдрост?
Of course, I didn't understand a word of it, but kids are cute in any language, I think, and it was just nice to stand and sit in the square, watch them rehearsing for a presentation they were due to do in a week or so's time. So they come down from school in the little yellow buses and they rehearse on a full PA to where the audience will soon be sitting in front of them. Just enjoying some food on a train. I'll find out more about that later. But first of all, a quick look at Peak Rail. We stayed overnight in a place called the Carriages. There was a good reason it was called that, because it was right by one of these heritage railway lines. Peak Rail is run on diesels mainly, it would seem, and this is a picture of a train crossing at the end of the road where our accommodation was. You're back on this train later on. Every couple of hours these volunteers pop out of the signal box and close the gates across the road as the diesel haul train comes trundling through. I couldn't help noticing that the carriages were mostly empty, which is a bit of a shame, and a complete contrast to the train that we were actually going to go on that day, which you'll have a look at later on. Back to the old Merseyrail trains that are still running, and I got off this one at Brunswick Station, which is on the Dock Road going south out of Liverpool towards the airport, and I went to look for a station that's going to be built over the next few years. As you walk along the streets here, you get views across the river to the Wirral, and you also get the idea that perhaps Ken Dodd left behind one of his diddy men and their car is parked along the verge here. At the moment, as the train leaves Brunswick and heads into Liverpool, the next stop is Liverpool Central, right in the city centre. But the Baltic Triangle, which I've talked about before, is getting a new station, and it's to be called Liverpool Baltic, and it used to be called St James Station. So the development of the Baltic Triangle is a few years further on than when I was last here. I haven't been since before the lockdowns, and the site of the station is somewhere around here. The only clue is a sign on the wall to the old St James station. That wall just across the road, I think it's somewhere behind and down from there. So that's all I know so far. But with the help of the CGI, we can see where this station is going to be and what it's going to look like. Colette has filmed this trip on the waters around Mandurah, and this is George Whalley. He's a renowned Aboriginal elder, and of course he had to play the didgeridoo for us, but he also is going to sing us a song as Colette films around the area that they were cruising. Coming up after George's song, there'll be a trip to Derbyshire once again, to the Ecclesbourne Valley Railway, and it was Colette who sent us a voucher so we could go on this steam train trip. When you live in Australia, you're rather a long way away to deliver presents at Christmas, so sending vouchers through the post is a wonderful idea.
Campfires burning in the afternoon sun, a gentle sea breeze blows across the land. through the river comes from Budan, living here at William Argent, living here at William Argent. The sounds of laughter as the children play, swimming in the river that the Wirral made. 42 millennia on the day, living here at William Argent, living here at William Argent. On young people sitting down on the banks, looking at their grannies play so free, singing songs about the land, living here at William Argent, living here at William Argent. Beneath the stars of this land, bin Jared Yunga Balak Murdin, you're a mom and me judging, living here at William Argent, living here at William Argent. Narang Maya, Narang Maya, Narang Buja, Narang Buja, Korabeleng, Korabeleng, at home a long time tomorrow, at home a long time tomorrow.
We're just tucking into, well, mine's a sausage butty, Ruth's is a bacon butty, on the Ecclesbourne Valley Railway. We're in the, I guess it's the restaurant car for now. We're going to take a trip on this train today. Believe it will be steam hauled, so we wait to find that out, and then we'll be off. The train makes its way from Wirksworth through Idridge Hay and Shottle up to Duffield, and it goes through mainly countryside where hikers would get off the train. There's nothing much else out there, and it's only when you get to near the end of the line that you start to see other people's houses out the window and you realise you're getting back nearer town again. My dad used to take me out on trains a lot when I was a child, and I used to love these old corridor trains. You have a little compartment where the adults sit, and then the kids can just wander up and down the corridor, hang out the windows and so on. Just don't get that anymore. It appears that today's railway children like to do this too. Of course, the staff on these trains are all volunteers, and they're very happy to chat to the kids and tell them about the railway and the places it's passing through. The The train gets to Duffield and it's time for some of us to take photographs of the engine shunting around, and for others it's time to be photographed with the engine. Duffield is an interchange with the mainline rail services, and so I had a quick look across at the platforms. At one point a train did go tearing through. Somebody told me it was an East Midlands train, so I don't know if any actually stop here. Time to get the engine back at the other end of the train and make our way back down to Warkworth. There are 5 coaches on this train, and we didn't actually know on our return journey that we'd have trouble getting a seat. We walked past the first 4 carriages, and there's some real afternoon tea and executive dining images to be seen here, but the first 4 carriages were full of diners, so we were left with the last carriage to find a place to travel home in. And finally, after our journey back through fairly featureless countryside, we arrive back at Warkworth station and we see the next lot of passengers waiting to take the Ecclesbourne Valley Railway. There's that dining car again, but that's not where we're taking our next coffee break. We're going back home and to the Thurston Country Park. As you head down to the shore for Thurston Beach, set back on the right is a big cafe called Strawberry Moon. And it doesn't just do coffee and cake, which is what we were here for. It does Sunday lunches and various other meals. I've also had breakfast here, so it's one I would really recommend for nice dining in a nice area. There's lots of indoor and outdoor space. And this time, instead of just looking at us drinking our coffee, I think you should have a close-up look at the carrot cake and the way it's presented at the Strawberry Moon. Our final port of call this August Bank Holiday edition is to Svishtov in Bulgaria, and I'd like to remind you once again that we've found, whichever country we're in, the best place to keep cool in the hot sun is under the shade of big trees, near water where you can feel the splash of spray on your face, or just in a nice restaurant. Now this is Svoboda, and it has views across the centre of Svishtov to the church. It has absolutely fine food and beer, and it's a good place to end our visit to Svishtov. Well, perhaps there's just one more place I should visit on my way back to the hotel. It's got dark, but it's still warm, and I still need the splash of the water. So back to the square opposite my hotel, where the Trumpet is still doing good business, people are still milling about, and there's a splash of water with a range of colours as we end this edition of the Maythorn Monthly. We'll be back at the end of September with our next edition.